Are we ready to go? Okay. The August 10, 2024 Grove School District Board of Directors.
Apologize, Mark, just a moment.
Okay.
He's going to throw it in the chat.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We're just going to wait a few moments till more attendees join. We had about 130 people register for the school board meeting today. I see we have about 60 or so joining the meeting right now, so we'll wait for that count to get a little maybe closer to our expected number, and then we'll start into the meeting. Okay, Mark, our attendee numbers have kind of flattened out a little bit there, so I think we're ready to start. Thank you.
Okay. The August 10, 2024 Grove School District Board of Directors meeting is called to order at 5:36 p.m. We'll do a roll call of board members present at this time. I'm Mark Everett, present. Kate Grandusky. Kate. Okay, we'll come back to Kate. Brad.
Present.
Valerie Ingram.
Present.
And Narce Rodriguez.
Here.
And Kate Grandusky. Okay, I think Kate is working to join us, so we'll go ahead. The school board will hear public comment for unscheduled public appearance received through the designated email address on the board page on the district website to be read by district staff at the appropriate time on the agenda. There will be a separate time to provide comments for the Safe Schools Blueprint presentation following the board discussion through the comment feature of the Zoom meeting. You must be registered to provide a comment. Okay.
And Mark, if you'd like at this time, I can go ahead and give some instructions and we can turn on the interpretation.
That would be great, Enrique. Thank you.
Okay, just a moment and I'll share my screen. Okay. At this time, we're going to offer an opportunity for anyone that wanted to listen in Spanish to select a Spanish language option. Up on the screen right now is an example of what you will see. Alma, if you would please, to our Spanish listening audience, explain to them what they should see here in a moment once we enable the interpretation.
Let me know.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. Hola, buenas tardes. Estamos aquí enfrente del Consejo de Directores, de Juntas del Director. Estamos hablando el día de hoy de Junta de Consejos y quiero dejarles saber que tienen la opción de escuchar esta interpretación en español. Solamente tiene que presionar el enlace que está abajo de su pantalla donde dice interpretación. Creo que está en inglés, pero es TERPRETATION. Entonces se presiona, parece como un mundo. Entonces si presiona ese botón, automáticamente les ingresa a la interpretación en español. Gracias.
And I apologize, give me just a moment, a little bit of technical difficulty. We're gonna, the option for the interpretation is being slow to load, so give me just a moment.
Permítanos un momento, estamos teniendo un poco de dificultad con la tecnología, pero ingresaremos pronto para que puedan seleccionar.
So Alma, if you wouldn't mind just explaining, I'm going to work through some issues that Zoom seems to be having right now with enabling that setting. We can go ahead, and if it's all right with Mark and Superintendent Parker, we'll go ahead and start the meeting, and then they should see that option as soon as we get it enabled. Apologize for the difficulty here.
Buenas tardes. Disculpen que actualmente estamos teniendo problemas con la tecnología. No podemos tener la posibilidad de habilitar el botón de interpretación. Entonces, vamos a continuar con esta sesión, con la junta. Y en cuanto ese botón aparezca, por favor, si necesitan la interpretación en español, presionen el botón y podrán ingresar a la sesión en español. Gracias.
Okay. I think we're set to move on at this point. So would you please join me in the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Introductions of audience and staff at this time. So other than school board members, perhaps we could have everybody who's on the call from, I don't know, I think from certainly from the district introduce themselves at this time.
Dave Parker, Superintendent.
John O'Neill, Assistant Superintendent.
Kimberly Chair, Director of Student Services.
Kevin Noreen, Director of Human Resources.
Enrique Piñon, Technology Manager.
David Warner, Communications Director.
Angela Graves, Cornelius Principal.
Rogelio Martinez, Principal at Cornell.
Mariela Mireles, Principal at Dilly Elementary.
Leonard Terrible, EL Migrant Coordinator.
Pete State Principal at Harvey Clark.
Karen O'Neill, High School Principal.
Roy Fisher, Principal at Joseph Gale.
Osvaldo Garcia, Principal at Neil Armstrong Middle School.
Seth Jones, Principal at Tom McCall Upper Elementary.
Krista Slaughter, Oak Grove Program Coordinator.
Okay, thank you very much. Approval of tonight's agenda. Certainly board members have had an opportunity to review that. Is there a motion to approve the agenda for this evening?
I move. Go ahead.
I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, say Aye.
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 Unanimous. Correspondence and celebrations, calendar notes recognition. Just a question maybe for Kathy Bonson. It's too early to have our student rep this evening. Is that correct, Kathy? Or?
Yes, we will
Okay.
be emailing him and he will start joining
Okay.
in September.
Yeah, okay, great. Okay, I'll turn it over to Mr. Parker here for a little bit of time here, and just have you, Mr. Parker, take it away here.
Perfect. I've got celebrations and I've got a little bit of what's going on in the district. First, I want to kind of do a thank you to Mark and Randy in our facilities department. We had a lot of surplus desks and chairs that we've been storing over at facilities, and they had been getting some requests from parents for those desks to create areas in their homes for that the children could study and could do their distance learning. And so they kind of stepped up, organized it, and we put out, I think Thursday, we put out some information about that we would today be putting that equipment out, and folks who wanted it could come by. It was set to open at 10. They already had people there beforehand picking up desks, and we were totally out of equipment by midday-ish, and they put out some more pallets of equipment. We ended up surplusing 200 desks. Actually, it's 143 small student desks, 84 of the uni desks, and about 200 chairs are now with families in our community. And again, I just thought that was a wonderful thing for them to kind of see a need and find a creative solution to it. So I want to say thank you to Mark, Randy, and Eileen to kind of get that organized and get it rolling. We're back evaluating we still have more desks, but we still have to get into the school year. So we're kind of evaluating where we're at with some of that equipment. Next, I'd like to say today was kind of the first day that we had all of our administrators back at work formally. And so we sat down with them today, and we started working with Dr. Stephanie Freiberg of the University of Michigan and Dr. Hazel Marcus out of Stanford. We've been working with their group for the last couple of years around some equity efforts. And in the spring, we did data, and this summer, I kind of presented some introductory data. But today, we spent a lot more time with our principals, really digging into what we were learning from our staff, from our parents, and from our students about their experience last spring. And again, a really thought-provoking day for us. The next 2 days, we're going to be working with all of the school equity teams to continue to talk about and make plans for how we can begin to continue to improve on students' experiences. We've got a lot of work coming up this week. We've got 2 more days of training. Thursday is a all administrator meeting. So it's going to be a busy week for us kind of getting back into the thick of things. We're about 3 weeks out from when staff report. So things are starting to really come together. Tonight, you're going to hear from John and principals and the teaching and learning team, kind of like some introductory, some visions about what this might look like and how we will kind of make this our start into comprehensive distance learning, and then hopefully transition into kind of some hybrid experiences. So it's been a busy Monday already.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dave. Unscheduled public appearance. The board appreciates community members sharing information during public comments. Are there any comments that have been received? Is a question, but let me finish with another statement. There'll be an opportunity to provide comments if you are registered for the Zoom meeting. So are there any comments at this time?
Yes, we do have a few, Mark. So from our when people registered for the Zoom, there were several comments, but looking over them, it looks like most of them will be or have the opportunity to be addressed when we talk about the blueprints. However, there are 2 other ones that came in via email. So let me get to those and I can read those to you.
There's one more, David, and I can read that one when you're done.
Okay. The first one is from Mary Whitmore. And let me read that to you here. It says, I never give up. Now I have another idea. I'd like to bring you a statement from a teacher who taught English reading with explicit phonics for 30 years and right in the district. Karen Reichert taught at Emmaus Christian School in Cornelius. Emmaus has closed and she's retired now, but I'm going to approach her about submitting a statement to you. If she agrees to submit a statement and she piques your interest, you might consider inviting her to do a presentation. In the meantime, you could check with recent and not so recent principals of the high school about the reading, writing, and spelling expertise of Emmaus grads. I'd be interested in hearing those comments too. Thanks for volunteering your time for the kids, Mary Whitmore. So that's the first one. I will find the second one. This is from Lynn McCune, who is an English teacher at the high school. Good evening. I am writing to urge you to reconsider rolling out the Canvas LMS to the entire district at this time. This is a huge shift to an LMS that is not intuitive, takes a lot of work up front to eventually feel easy to navigate on the user's end, and is a system that is entirely foreign to the vast majority of our teachers, students, and families. Teachers are already hard at work figuring out best methods for teaching in an online world, understanding what a hybrid may look like to prepare for that eventuality, and at least at the high school level, overhauling curriculum to allow the change from 8 classes on an A-B schedule over 18 weeks to 4 classes daily for 9 weeks. We are also focused on the priority of connecting with our students and building a community, establishing those relationships that are paramount to learning from a distance. That is already a Herculean task. Adding a new LMS on top of all that is, quite frankly, unnecessary. I propose a slower rollout of this new system, more like what we have done in the past. Consider asking for volunteers across the district to pilot it and develop it this year, and then using their expertise to bring on everyone else in the 2021-2020 school year, 22 school year. Alternatively, I understand that the elementary schools are appreciative of the way Canvas can reach emerging readers with more buttons and visuals. If that's the case, start Canvas at the K-6 level with this year, grow the expertise there, allow the district team to focus their need for troubleshooting, and add in 7th through 12th grades in the next year or two, as the students and families move into those grades. In the meantime, NAMS and the high school can use Google Classroom, a platform that students, teachers, and families are already familiar with, in a streamlined fashion to help ease the navigation issues of the spring. We have in-house experts who could help build guidelines to make accessing Google Classroom easy for students and families. This delay would also give the secondary schools time to figure out solutions to what I see as a massive drawback to Canvas, the loss of seeing work in progress. If I have to wait until a deadline to provide comments on a PDF that students then need to edit on a Google Doc and resubmit, I lose being able to work with them on the writing process in real time and being able to see their ongoing revisions. And this feedback loop is crucial to student growth. I know I'm not alone in my apprehension. The union's most recent survey asked 2 questions about shifting to Canvas for this year, and I am confident you will hear my concerns echoed in those results. Thank you for your consideration, Lynn McCune. Kathy, did you have a third?
We have a third one, and it's from high school student Thomas Burford. I will be a senior this year. I understand that there will be a lot of changes and challenges this school year, and I have a question around those. I have worked hard taking prerequisite classes for Viking House over the last few years. The prerequisites are series of classes to take, as well as being on track for graduation with a minimum GPA. My question for you is, will there be special considerations for this unique program to be able to continue this year, there is a small group that has to work in person to complete the Viking House. Thank you.
So Mark, two things.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'll follow up with Lynn. I'm a little confused because of the use of Google Docs, both Sheets, Slides, or Google Docs. I don't think Canvas says, I'm pretty sure you can still use links and we can still use Google Docs. We're switching the learning management system from Google Classroom to Canvas, but what she was describing as a problem, I believe we still can do. But let me do some work on that, and we will get back to Lynn on that. And then I'll also work with Karen around the decision-making around Viking House, because we do know it's an awesome program. People love it. So I don't know if we've kind of made decisions there, but certainly it's one that will get some special consideration. I just don't know what that looks like yet. I don't know if you have. I'll get back to you.
Yeah, okay. I think they were good questions, and I agree. I do agree with the Viking House question was a great question. So that sounds great, Dave. Thank you. Okay. Let's see. Go on to the next item, which is the consent agenda. So the consent agenda is made up of routine, non-controversial items to be voted on under one motion. Are there any items within the consent items a board member or the superintendent wishes to discuss separately?
I don't need to discuss something separately, but I was just wondering what was going on with the assistant principal at the high school. Are we going to be filling that position or leaving it open?
Karen, so here's what I know. This is just emerging very quickly, but no, we'll be going out to look to fill that position. Family and community outreach between the administration and our community right now is it's at an all-time high. So having our assistant principals in place to do that work is critical, I think. Karen, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that too.
No, I just did the requisition, so hopefully it gets posted fairly soon.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, seconded. So we'll do a roll call vote. Start with Narce Rodriguez.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Valerie?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
Kate?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well, so that motion passes. Thank you. So the next item on the agenda for this evening is a presentation, and this is the Ready Schools Safe Learners Reentry School presentation. It's got blueprints in the packet, but before I turn it over to Mr. O'Neill, who will lead the presentation, I'll just say that we will review comments and questions, and the administration will answer the ones that they can. Following the board meeting, district staff will work to provide responses, and the information will be posted on the district website. So with that, Mr. O'Neill.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Let's see. I'm hoping that I can get this link open. There we go. It was right under stop sharing. So anyway. All right, first of all, I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the cabinet members, all the principals that are on today and this evening for this presentation, and to answer questions that might come up. And all the teams that have worked so hard to create, update, and update their blueprints according to ODE updates as we've been receiving them, so that we could get this before you. A lot of work and effort has been taken place by a lot of people, and I just really want to call that out and appreciate it. It's been a very interesting summer. So ODE blueprints. All Oregon schools are to put together a blueprint reopening team to create a plan for reopening. On these blueprints statewide, there are 3 options: fully open, which means all students report to the school; hybrid, which means minimizing the number of students to ensure that 6 feet or 35 square feet per person is provided for with student cohorts identified; or CDL, comprehensive distance learning. And the timeline is to take these blueprints to the local board to share your plans, which is tonight's meeting, and then submit school plans to ODE by August 15th. ODE will continue to provide additional guidance, and our plans will need to be updated accordingly. These updates may continue throughout the year as more is learned about the virus and how best to combat the spread. For instance, I know we have this meeting planned for tonight. Tomorrow is the first update, and we will take that update and the information requirements and guidelines into consideration. The good news is each of the school blueprints, I'm sure all the board members have perused through all of them, contain links that can be updated seamlessly so that we can best meet those guidelines. Also, our school plans address only the first 3 sections of the blueprint plans that are before you tonight. And these areas address public health, facilities, and school operations, and response to an outbreak. There are 8 sections in total. These areas that I just shared have been reviewed and have been identified by the site reopening teams, and that feedback information is before you this evening. But what is not before you this evening are the 5 other areas required to be submitted that are not required to be submitted to the board or ODE at this time. Our school principals and their site reopening teams will share the blueprint plan with the faculty once school resumes with pre-service. And during that time, they'll share their reopening blueprints along with their team members co-presenting for additional review and improvement and to address sections 4 through 8. So even though the sections 4 through 8 aren't before you this evening, they exist in working documents that each principal has, and those will be continue to be refined in with their school faculty, the entire faculty. That means licensed as well as classified staff during pre-service and throughout the year as additional updates are released by ODE. So due to the recent governor's matrix for reopening schools, we've decided to check 2 boxes in our school blueprint plans. One for comprehensive distance learning, or CDL, and hybrid models of learning. In doing so, we can move seamlessly between CDL and hybrid models as the virus continues to change over the upcoming school year. So we've literally checked both boxes and planned for each. Questions again for tonight's presentation, please add your questions to the chat and we will answer them in either the presentation during Q&A or as our chair said, later in a posted Q&A document online. So definitions, ODE definitions, synchronous learning. Synchronous learning is learning in which teacher and students interact at the same time and in the same place. They don't have to be in person. And some of our technology solutions that we've identified will allow this to happen synchronously. In other words, teachers will teach their classroom and either half the class in the hybrid model will be viewing that instruction online while the other half of the class is before them, or it's during CDL or continuous distance learning, where all students are online and so's the teacher. But the learning is taking place at a given time and students can ask questions, raise their hands simultaneously. Asynchronous learning, as defined by ODE, is learning that occurs in the elapsed time between two or more people. This includes an email exchange online between a teacher or an instructional assistant and a student. It also is online discussion forums. Teachers can use that, particularly with our new learning management system, Canvas. Message boards, blogs, podcasts, etc., all qualify under asynchronous. Synchronous, the live learning, they are live with the cameras on, both the students and the teachers. Asynchronous, video and assignments, students are accessing online instruction independently, receiving timely feedback. So in this fall, as we open with the distance learning model, students, the expectation is for them to attend every day following the school's bell schedule. Now, what we mean by attend, is that they get online and view their teacher in their neighborhood school teaching the lesson. Now, that teacher could be teaching from school or from home, but they're accessing that. And we know that they're accessing that with our new learning management system. So attendance is achieved. Grading expectations. Assignments are collected and graded now during CDL. Last spring, assignments were collected, but they were not graded, and feedback and grades were not assigned per the governor's directive. Grades will be assigned for coursework this fall, and we will use those grades for report cards and credit at the high school level. New elements. So one thing that we heard loud and clear is that the spring online learning was not as robust, not as engaging, and definitely not as exciting for students or teachers or staff as it could be. So what we've done is prioritize enhancing our digital access. And by doing so, we've identified Canvas Suite as a learning management system. And let me just say, Oregon Department of Education, under the Ready Safe Learners guidance for the school year, requires all school districts to identify one learning management system. Also, we need to provide an online learning platform. We used Google Meets this past spring. We are transitioning to an upgraded version of Zoom, and I'll explain why. Also, Remind 101 common communication channels for families and staff district-wide will be provided for communication purposes. So what was considered to make these tech decisions? First of all, again, as required by ODE, consistency across the district through K-12. One thing that we've heard repeatedly and have learned with other districts that have implemented learning management systems district-wide is parents with students in multiple grade levels. It's challenging if we have different learning management systems across different grade levels because they have to learn to navigate them as well to help support their students at various levels. So that was the reason why ODE identified consistency across a district, K through 12, in terms of learning management. Also, accessibility for students and parents online and offline was a priority. Safety and security of online components is key and paramount. The digital online safety of our students, again, is paramount. And longevity, the ability to grow with our needs now and in the future, not only throughout this year, but ongoing. And the need for collaboration, an increased ability for teachers and students and teachers and parents to work together to ensure student success and student engagement. Again, these were priorities that we considered to make our tech decisions. So we looked at also several different data sources. One is a Freiburg survey that surveyed all students and teachers and parents. And we looked at that data, as well as the FGEA, our local teachers union association. They surveyed their staff as well. And we looked at that data extensively to help inform our decisions that we're making here this evening and recommendations this evening. One of which we heard loud and clear from FGEA, if we are transitioning to Canvas, a new learning management system for some, or the first learning management system, for instance, for our elementary levels, then we better increase the amount of time for professional development so our teachers and staff, as well as the ability to train our parents and students how to use these systems, we need to prioritize that. So for instance, this evening, we have a modified calendar for you this evening, which adds additional 4 days of professional development to provide that just-in-time training for teachers and time for them to work with these new tools individually so that they can integrate their work and then go back to professional development and then the application time period as well, which is absolutely aligned and consistent with good teaching practices. We will also monitor and adjust those professional developments and ask for staff and parent survey feedback to help inform the next iteration of PD and what should be identified and prioritized. So Canvas. The reason why we went with Canvas is it's a consistent framework which could be used throughout the district. Also, Canvas has been selected by every Ivy League school. It is the learning management system for Oregon University, public universities. It's also the learning management system of PCC, which we do a lot of work with as dual credit opportunities, as well as student enrollment at the high school level. Some choose to take coursework there as well. That is the learning management system they will see when they transition to PCC, or if they attend an Oregon University school that's public. Also, Canvas organization, the organization features include calendars, assignment calendars, daily to-do lists for students, step-by-step learning modules, and much, much more. It embeds most applications into one learning management system, which is key. It does allow for the import of Google material. Parent app also on Canvas allows parents to review upcoming or past assignments. Parents can check on grades, and parents can receive alerts for student activity or inactivity. And it provides offline access available. One thing that we wanted to make sure when we identified our learning solution is that regardless of where a family is during this worldwide pandemic, that we provide a solution that meets their needs and is flexible and allows them to pivot as a family. So what do I mean by that? So comprehensive distance learning, we will provide the bell schedule, and teachers will teach during that time. And we have principals that will share sample classroom lessons coming here shortly. What does the day look like at the elementary, upper elementary, middle, and high school? We'll present that to you because I know that's one of the top questions. But what happens when, heaven forbid, a family comes down with coronavirus, or grandma comes down with coronavirus, or mom or dad, or the student is sick, and they can't access the classroom learning that's taking place synchronously? Well, the solution is using Canvas. It allows the teachers to record their lesson, that is their direct instruction, and then it allows them also to upload the assignments. So a family that might be in an emergency room at 10 p.m. and they're dealing with a family member who has contracted this, just throwing it out there, they can access at 10 or 11 o'clock at night that their teacher's classroom virtually and see what the lesson was during that day, and go ahead and work on those assignments and submit those assignments. Teachers can also customize that so that Canvas helps grade those assignments. For several assignments, they can grade it for the teacher and help populate that in the grade book in terms of synergy. So it's a really good tool. It will be a steep learning curve for all of us. I'm doing the modules as well. However, we think that this investment is going to be well worth it as we transition into the school year. Now for Zoom, why did we go with Zoom versus Google Meets? We just learned Google Meets. That's a great question. Zoom provides increased engagement tools that Google at this time does not provide. They say they're going to provide these before the school year, I believe is what we heard, but they have not perfected it as of yet, and they've not pushed it out for us. So we decided to go with Zoom. And what that does is it allows teachers to create breakout rooms. They can go ahead and assign students to small group during the lesson and push students out to the lesson. And then they can seamlessly join those breakout rooms to monitor what's going on, provide just-in-time feedback, or to redirect a small group, and then provide, okay, we have 5 minutes left before we come back to share out. They can push that out in terms of digitally to each group, and the students can see that on their Chromebook. And then it counts down to rejoining the classroom, just as they would if they were in the classroom and the teacher calls the classroom back to whole group instruction. Zoom does that seamlessly. It also provides the teachers the ability for polling and securing student feedback or just-in-time feedback and additional classroom management features. With our Google platform that we use this spring, if something is going on in a student's background or they're acting up, the teacher had no ability to turn off the mic or turn off the camera and then speak with them privately. Zoom allows for those interactions to take place to minimize the off-task disruptions or behaviors very seamlessly. And it allows the privacy for that teacher to have that one-on-one conversation real time. Also, Zoom provides instructional tools that mirror classroom instruction strategies. For instance, raised hands, intentional groupings, formative assessment feedback can be collected real time, as well as Zoom's a universal platform across the district that can be used on any device. That was important for us as well, whether it's an iPad at the early levels, or if it is Chromebooks, district provided Chromebook, or the student's platform at home. Also, the last tool that I want to call out tonight is Remind. That's our communication system. It has been in use in several buildings for multiple years, such as at the high school, but we're going to use that and continue to use that universally across the district. Remind provides the ability to receive messages, text messages within the app at the individual classroom, school, and district level. And it provides secure messaging. So we will continue our work with Remind and the refinement and use as we conduct our work in CDL. So again, operational aspects. Following the governor's instruction, our blueprint plans have sanitation, facilities, transportation, and food service considerations clearly identified. But I want to take this opportunity to point out food service will continue, whether or not we're in comprehensive distance learning or if we're in hybrid or in person. We will continue that. And in CDL, that will look exactly what we were doing during the spring, using our transportation services to provide food. If we transition, or when we transition to the hybrid model, where half of our students are in Monday, Tuesday, and then the other half comes Thursday, Friday, what will happen is breakfast and lunch will be bag and go. So students will pick up when they come to school their breakfast and lunch, and they will eat them in the classrooms. But all of that is continuously going to be refined as the entire school faculties come back together and they discuss the specifics in terms of Cornelius Elementary or Tom McCall Upper Elementary School, or whether that be Forest Grove High School. But these operational aspects are also included in the blueprints. To expand upon those, physical distancing, minimizing close contact, again, 6 feet from other people, or allowing 35 feet per person in the classroom. Our facilities have done an amazing job. They've worked at measuring every classroom in the district, and we know what number we can house at each of our schools and if each of our classrooms in the school. Hand hygiene, frequent hand washing with soap and water or using hand sanitizer. Cohorts, conducting all activities in small groups that remain together over time with minimal mixing of groups. As you know, we're starting district-wide for the first couple months in CDL, Comprehensive Distance Learning. So this will give us more and more time to perfect those student cohorts. But what we're looking at K-12 is alpha order. So that way, whether you have students at the high school level, middle school, upper elementary school, and elementary school, they're members of the same family are in the same cohort. And again, we'll only have 2 cohorts if we move to the hybrid model, or when we move to the hybrid model. Protective equipment, that's use of face shields, face coverings, and barriers, other PPE. Those have been planned for and continue to be planned for. Environmental cleaning and disinfection, especially high-touch services, and isolation of sick people and quarantine of exposed people. All of those procedures have been identified. And what's great about the format that we've used in the blueprints, those areas are identified using links in our blueprints. So the district level teams or schools level teams can update those links, and it's seamlessly updating our blueprint plans as we get additional guidance from either the governor or Oregon Department of Education. So learning considerations, parents' availability to get students online. We took those into account. Creating a schedule that works both in person and online. What we did not want to do is to have one learning schedule if we're on comprehensive distance learning, and a different one if we switch to hybrid. We want the same bell schedule, so to speak, whether that's virtual or in person, so that families can plan the remainder of the school year. ODE requirements, providing live instruction. One thing, again, I'd like to point out is live instruction is what we heard from our student surveys and from our parent surveys, as well as our staff surveys. Particularly with the Freiberg equity surveys. And we saw that played out in our summer school, migrant summer school at the elementary and middle school level. Mr. Garcia Contreras, principal at Neil Armstrong, who was also the principal at the middle school level, saw that when they provided live instructions, students attended. They were engaged. And so that was key to our instructional model that we're sharing with you this evening. And then providing access to replays as needed. The taped lessons of the live instruction, whether or not the student was in that lesson, even if they were in lesson, they can access it at home later on. I don't really have this concept. Let me view that lesson online. Or if it's student, again, was unable to attend that day, they can go ahead and access it just in time later on that evening. And then providing access to parents, students, and staff surveys. And we will continue to do that this coming year to see and refine. Like good teachers, we monitor and adjust our practices so that students are successful. And again, that summer school pilot. So first off, right now is Angela Graves. She's the principal at Cornelius Elementary. Cornelius, we chose Cornelius because it's not only a dual language program, but it's also an English only program for the students. And so this is a sample of the planning and what the school day would look like this coming year. So Angela, would you like to take over?
Sure. You also chose me to talk because I spent
Yes.
3 weeks writing schedules. Okay, so we are in a unique position at Cornelius because we kind of represent the rest of the district. But I also meant in a unique position because I am both a principal, so a staff member, but I am also a parent of a young child at Cornelius. So I have that parent perspective too. And so if you're a parent on here, I totally feel your pain and I promise you it will be better this year. So last year was really stressful. My daughter was in first grade and I trained her to get herself on her computer every day for her Google Meets meeting. She did not do any work in Google Classroom. I'm the principal. Okay. So I'm like, if I can just get her on a meeting, I feel like I've done my job as a parent. So this year, all you have to do as a parent is you have to get your child on a meeting. Literally, that's it. And the teachers will take it from there. You don't have to do packets. You don't have to train your kids on how to do anything. The teachers will take care of it. So we are providing live instruction every single day, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. You get a rest day on Wednesday. So Wednesday will be a catch-up day. It'll be a time to do independent practice. The teachers can contact you on Wednesday and do some one-on-one help with you. There's lots of flexibility in the schedule. So you just have to do 4 days a week of live meetings. And that'll be about 2.5 hours to 4.5 hours a day of live instruction. And we will record the first 30 minutes of every lesson and pop that up into Canvas. So if it doesn't fit your schedule, you can do it. And then I know something that I'm going to do at my school is no assignments will be due until the following Monday, because we know you're working full time. You don't have time to sit there with your kids on the computer all day long. I get it because I'm doing the same thing. So you will have evenings and weekends to get caught up. And then the assignments at Cornelius, at least, won't be due until Monday. So that should help ease some of that frustration that we experienced last year. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so I wanted to show you a day in the life of a third grader. So I chose Mrs. Murillo's class and Mrs. Cavolo's class, and these are their schedules for next year. Mrs. Murillo's class is our third grade English only class. So this will represent the rest of the district that doesn't have dual language classes. And Mrs. Cavolo's class is a third grade dual language class. So that'll represent the classes at Cornelius and at Echo Shaw. So Mrs. Murillo's class here at 9 o'clock, there will be a live ELD lesson. That ELD is English language development. So that would be for kids who have English as their second or third language. That'll be a live lesson with their ELD teacher. At 9:45, there will be a live math lesson. So 30 minutes of it will be recorded and it will be put up into the Canvas learning management system. But the teacher will be there for a whole hour. So there'll be some mini lesson, direct instruction, just like it would be in the regular classroom. And then the teacher's going to stay on for the whole time. So then she can do small groups. With the Zoom capabilities, we can do breakout rooms, and there will be an IA, an instructional assistant, assigned to every single classroom. So therefore, she can take half the group. The IA can take half the group. They can get really small instruction groups happening at that time. Also, special education groups will happen at that time. Intervention groups can happen at that time during that second half of the math block. Then there'll be a 30-minute specials time that'll be live. So 2 days a week, that'll be PE. 2 days a week, that'll be music. Again, Wednesdays is off. Then they get a lunch break. We're calling it wellness on the CDL schedule because that's what ODE calls it. But basically it's lunch and recess. And when we're at school, it'll be this exact same schedule, lunch and recess at that time. Then after lunch and recess, they'll come back and they'll get a 90-minute English literacy block. 30 minutes of it will be direct instruction that will be posted to Canvas. And then the other 60 minutes can be small group. The teacher can listen to the kids reading one-on-one. Again, we can do those breakout rooms on Zoom. And then we will have 30 minutes of social studies and science. And that'll be live as well. Okay, so Mrs. Cavolo's class. So when I said it was like 2.5 hours, I'm just talking about the 30 minutes for each subject. I saw a question pop up about that. So it's 30 minutes of ELD, 30 minutes of math, 30 minutes of PE, 30 minutes of English Lit, and 30 minutes of social studies and science. So it's only 30 minutes, so 2.5 hours of time that would be required for the student to participate in. The rest is just guided practice. Okay, then you have Mrs. Cavolo's class. Same thing, except for it's dual literacy now. So she still has 30 minutes of PE and music, 30 minutes of math, plus an additional 30 minutes of guided practice. English literacy is an hour, Spanish literacy is an hour, but again, only 30 minutes of that is required. The other 30 minutes would be guided practice, small groups, interventions, sped groups, that sort of thing. Then they have, again, lunch and recess, that wellness block, ELD in the afternoon for 30 minutes, socials and science is 30 minutes. So that's how it is going to be for the life of a third grader. And that will be across the district. Yeah.
Angela, would you mind just sharing about, our prioritization of relationships, students' relationships, and how we're going to start each morning?
Right. So we will incorporate that social emotional piece into everything we do. And we're not going to start the year with this exact schedule because we need to get to know our students. The nice thing that we had last spring is that we already knew our students when we went into distance learning. So we didn't have to develop relationships with families and parents and students and get to know people's schedules. So therefore we have some work to do this year. So that's why extending the calendar with those professional development days, I see those days as also building relationships with families, doing one-on-one calls with every single family, like you do a home visit. Instead of a home visit, we're going to come to you to your home through your computer screen and talk with each family and get to know you. So we'll be doing a lot of that. Plus, I know my teachers are really excited to do evening meetings with families and just maybe even do like a once a month, family night via Zoom, because then you don't have to worry about childcare. We don't have to, pull the teacher for 3 hours from their own home lives, because it'd just be a 30 minutes. They pop on at home just like the parents do. So we are definitely going to prioritize the social emotional piece, and we're going to have community time built into this as well.
Thank you, Angela. Greatly appreciate it. And the community time or the carpet time at the beginning of each day is so important. And one thing that we've heard loud and clear is we have caring and committed teachers and staff, and they really felt like the teachers cared about their children last year in the surveys. So that's a plus. And we're highlighting that relationship component, which is so key throughout all the grade levels, and you'll see that. So next up, a day in the life of a fifth grader is Mr. Seth Jones. He's the principal of Tom McCall Upper Elementary School. And Seth, would you mind running through what a daily schedule would look like?
Yeah, not at all. Hi, everyone. Again, Seth Jones, the principal of Tom McCall. And it's great to be able to talk about, how our school is responding to all of these challenges. I guess the first thing to say is as each one of the principals is going to talk, so we do meet together as a district frequently. So I'm not going to repeat a lot of what Angela has said, and both Oz and Karen after me have a lot of additional information to share. So I'm going to keep it brief and really just go over the information from our daily schedule. And please know that, as things change, we're going to be pushing out lots of information to the families of Tom McCall students. Half of you we don't know yet. So there's just, there's a lot of information for us to share. But broad brush, what it really looks like for us is our school day is actually going to start 15 minutes early and end 15 minutes late. So assuming that we are back actually at school, we'll begin at 7:15 for breakfast and morning routine. As mentioned earlier about our social emotional learning, so that does take place for the first 15 minutes of each day. And we're looking at the second step curriculum, guidance curriculum, team building, restorative practices. Then for both 5th and 6th graders, it's really about everyone has 2 teachers. They have one teacher for language arts and social studies and another teacher for math and science. So we have a total of 26 classroom teachers. 13 of them teach math and science, 13 of them teach language arts and social studies. So for the student in this example, they would have math, science, and health in the morning for this 2-hour instructional block. Then they would go to PE or music. Then they would have lunch. And then there's a 2-hour block in the afternoon. And that would be for this student, the live instruction of language arts, social studies, ELD, and title. And then we have our afternoon routine and dismissal. And then, John, I believe there's one additional slide for a 6th grade experience. This is very similar, just the difference is the specials happen here from 8 to 8:45 in the morning. And then there's one 2-hour block, and then the second 2-hour block is separated by a lunch. So there's live instruction from 10:45 to 11:45, followed by lunch, followed by another hour of the live instruction, and then the afternoon routine and dismissal. I think our biggest challenge is going to be building relationships with students through comprehensive distance learning. We really focus on relationships, and we're going to be working pretty hard on making sure that we understand all the new electronic tools out there, and that we have some real strong ideas about building relationships as much as we can with students online. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Appreciate that. Next, we have Principal Garcia Contreras, Neil Armstrong Middle School. Osvaldo.
Thank you. Good evening. You may move forward with the next slide. Obviously, for Neil Armstrong, we're gonna be presenting many aspects that are similar to what has been presented for the elementary level and the upper elementary. So I'm gonna try to focus on what is different. First, the focus. Obviously, at the very beginning of the year, we are going to be spending a lot of time in this building relationship with students, but at the same time, by design, we understand very well that there is also a responsibility to also keep a strong focus on academics. So when we met with the reopening team, we started looking at what it means for a student at that age to be in session online for 7 periods. And we realized that was not going to be a formula for success. So as a team, we decided that we needed to cut down the number of periods and make the periods longer. So at this point, we agreed on a schedule in which the students are going to be attending 5 classes, 5 periods. And one of those periods is going to be a success class in which the students are going to be learning different skills, organizational skills. It's not gonna be necessarily content related. So that would make things a lot easier for a student during the day, because they will be receiving actually at most 4 content subject matter classes. What that means in terms of minutes is that a student typically is gonna be attending 5 hours a day for a total of 300 minutes a day. And that actually means an increase of 1 hour and 13 minutes more instructional time in the subjects of mathematics and language arts. Because one of the things that we had to establish by design was that classes needed to be condensed into 1 semester. except for language arts and mathematics that we decided to keep it all year long, given that at Neil Armstrong Middle School, that is our academic focus, or the main academic focus. So synchronous time between a student and a teacher is going to be about 300 minutes a day, which is an hour per period. The asynchronous time is going to be dedicated mainly for Wednesdays, in which we're going to be addressing social emotional curriculum. We're going to be addressing a student academic recovery time for those extreme cases that Mr. O'Neill mentioned. A student had an emergency, a parent had an emergency, anybody got sick, they still have access to the pre-recorded lessons, and they could have some questions, and that's when they meet asynchronously with their teachers. We also have flexibility within that model for teachers who decide at any given moment to use a flipped model of instruction. So weekly, it would mean about 1,290 minutes, which is 21.5 hours a week. So if you could please move forward to the next slide. So in addition to the considerations that were given or shown by the, Mr. O'Neill, we have a few additional. And obviously I already spoke about moving from 7 period into 6 period day. However, that 6 period is actually a common prep for teachers who will be, having an early release. Like I said, math and language arts will be offered all year. The rest of the subjects will be semester long. The number of elective classes, we are still offering a great number of elective classes, those that are possible to implement in this model, in this distance learning model. So we had to simplify the number of electives offering, but we are still providing sufficiently to fill student schedule. There is a lunch block that has been established. I mean, obviously for the two different schedules that I will show you in a minute. In the comprehensive distance learning, there is a lunch block in which we try to make sure it matched the allowed time for the students to be able to access the food distribution centers. And that was matched with our schedule so that our teachers could also have their break and lunchtime during that same block of time. I already talked about the early release. When we are back into the hybrid model, we are gonna have a different schedule in which students will be there until 1:15, and they will be exiting early with their lunches. Because that early release is at 1:15 and we didn't want to have a student for that long without food, we will establish a middle day snack for students to have some nutrition during the school day. We can move forward to the next slide. What you're seeing right now is actually a copy of both schedules. The very first one is the schedule for comprehensive distance learning. And you can see in there that we're talking about 1 hour per period, the lunch block in the middle I was talking about, and then 3:30 would be the last period, when the last period of the day ends. And the schedule that follows is the hybrid model in which the students are going to have that big lunchtime block in the middle. So if you go to the next slide, it's very much a general explanation of the same. So you can see that on Mondays and Tuesdays, if we are in the hybrid model, we are gonna have the first cohort of students while the second cohort is online. That first cohort will be in session live. Then on Thursdays and Fridays, there it says Thursday twice in there, but it should be Thursday and Friday, we're gonna have the second cohort attending live while the first cohort is attending, in distance learning mode. Obviously that Wellness Wednesday is now empty because we still need to finalize some conversations as to what that's going to look like. But we already know that it's going to be time employed for facility sanitation. It's going to be time employed to provide additional services to special needs students. And when I mean students with special needs, I'm talking about SPED students, but also ELL. And it's going to be also the time for our teachers to meet and have house meetings, professional development time, social emotional support, office hours, and whatever else we might need.
Okay, next, thank you very much, Osvaldo. Karen O'Neill, principal at the Forest Grove High School, will outline what does the high school look like on a regular day.
Hello, everybody. So as you see on the screen, our synchronous time. So we basically decided that it was better for our kids and for our teachers to focus on 4 classes instead of the typical 8 that we have at the high school. And so 4 classes, 90 minutes a day, we're basically going to follow the same bell schedule. Direct instruction, the expectation will be that between 30 and 40 minutes, no more than that, will be direct instruction. Those lessons, as you've heard in all of the levels before, they will be recorded. So they will be available for students, whether they miss the session or if they just want to use those recorded lessons just to go back and relearn something or hear it again. And then the rest of the time of that 90-minute block will be independent practice, guided practice, any kind of small group. The nice thing, I went through a training this last week using Zoom with CFE, and it was amazing. I mean, basically the teacher sent us into partners, dyads, triads. We did small groups, we did large groups, and it was seamless. And they pulled us back as soon as they wanted to, gave you a little countdown. So that's going to be really cool, I think. So basically, no A/B day. We're taking half of a student schedule, focusing on that for 9 weeks. That 9 weeks will give the kids a semester's worth of credit. So for 2 9-week periods, that would equal a year-long class. We will be able to get through the same amount of credits, the same amount of content. It's just going to look different. And we figured that 9-week period was a good time, especially since we want to go into hybrid as soon as possible. So being able to do that with that 9-week grading period. So other things in our hybrid or in our cohort reopening team. So these are things that we considered: engagement and attendance. One thing that we heard loud and clear from the distance learning in the fall was when students, when instruction was live and you had personal interaction with the kids, that was obviously much better. And then focusing on fewer classes at a time, managing 8 in a distance learning model, and expecting teachers to plan and do that kind of learning when the learning curve is already going to be, more, didn't make sense. So cohorts, we're doing like everyone else, 30 students in a cohort. And when we get to hybrid, 15 on Monday and Tuesday will be in, the other 15 are at home, and then it flips on Thursday and Friday. So pretty seamless in going from a complete distance learning to a hybrid model, and hopefully, obviously, an in-person model, totally in person. So again, the 9-week grading, it's consistency and focus as we continue to experience constant changes. Like John said earlier, we get additional, I think this is version 4, we get that version from ODE tomorrow with additional guidance around cohorts and special education. So another of the several more of the considerations to prioritize the needs of students that are needing credits to graduate. So some of this has to do with the spring students that received incompletes, but it's also students that are credit deficient. We need to prioritize those students in making sure that they have an opportunity to earn those credits and still graduate on their graduation date. Prioritize the needs of students with disabilities and ELL students. We also took into consideration and AP and dual credit classes. There are a lot of regulations or a lot of nuances around those classes that we need to work with. If we're articulating for college credit, we need to be able to offer those classes in a way that students can be successful. And so we've had a lot of conversation around that. ODE is very clear in their guidance that they want a well-rounded education, regardless of whether we are doing distance learning or whether we're in a hybrid. So we need to figure out a way to make those classes work. And so students will still have elective classes. They will have science lab classes, and they will still have performance-based classes. Obviously, everything's going to look different, but those will still be available. Year-long classes, one of the considerations that we just had to talk through, and no matter what our situation is, nothing's going to be perfect. But year-long classes, I mean, a positive part of it is that kids that are credit deficient, if they need 2 years of math, they'll be able to do that. They'll do first 9 weeks, second 9 weeks, then they can do third and fourth 9 weeks for another year's worth of credit. So that's a very positive thing. If students are on track, they could potentially have math or language arts first 9 weeks, and then not have their other math or language arts until 3, right? So there could be a gap there. Or if they have it 1 and 2, it might not be another half a year until they have that class again. So those are some of the challenges and considerations. And then when we get to the hybrid model, so when we actually have kids come back into the building, our schedule is going to look a little bit different in that we will need to stagger where kids get dropped off, their entrance to the building. So they'll actually be assigned an entrance to the building, and then certain pathways around the school, hallways, one-ways. We'll have some hallways that are 2-way, but we'll be very intentional about where kids are arriving, and then also dismissal. Everything will need to be staggered. Lunches will be available. You'll see in my schedule, we're just doing a regular straight bell schedule right now. We're not doing, first lunch, second lunch, but when we get to hybrid, we'll have 4 carts downstairs where kids will pick up their lunches at their assigned time, go back to their classroom to eat, and then same thing with the upstairs. Here's our bell schedule. And again, since we're starting out in distance learning, it's just a straight bell schedule. So they will have 4 blocks of classes, and they will follow that schedule, and direct instruction would be between 30 and 40 minutes of that. And then the rest of that is small group, partner work, academic support.
Awesome, thank you. And now for special education. We're waiting for special education guidance, like Karen said, from ODE this week. Kim, would you like to share this, or would you like me to just go ahead?
No, I'll go ahead and share it. First, I just wanted to recognize that we know that students with disabilities have been really impacted, and parents of students that experience disability have been really impacted during the closure. So we're hopeful that ODE will create some flexibilities within this model that will allow us to provide some limited in-person instruction for our most complex students, but we're waiting to hear from them on that. As we've started planning for special education services, we've used these guiding principles as a way to help us plan and keep our focus on what's really important. And the first being health and safety for students, staff, and families. Second being that remembering that students are general education students first, and if we employ universal design for learning within this model, that our students will get access to what they need. And parent and student relationships. Parents and students are valued members of the team that we really want to work with parents to come up with the best possible solutions. And then quality specially designed instruction for students. We're moving forward with synchronous instruction for specially designed instruction, just like the general ed instruction. And we think that'll be extremely important as we move forward to be able to engage students. Next slide, John. So I planned this presentation really focused on students, or excuse me, services within the comprehensive distance learning model. We know there'll be synchronous specially designed instruction. Most of our students receive their instruction in the general education, and that will not change. This model has provided us a good opportunity to be able to provide specially designed instruction within the regular ed classroom, within the virtual classroom. It's also giving us opportunities for co-teaching, and then we will still have some virtual small group. What would be considered in person, they would be pull-out groups, but in a virtual environment, it would be a separate class. And students that receive adult support, We'll be doing virtual check-ins, push-in support in general classrooms. And there will be classroom support, some live support from special education teachers. And then, as always, our students will receive case management with frequent communication and coordination of services. Just some other tidbits, IEP meetings and evaluations in this comprehensive distance learning. Until we meet metrics, everything has to be virtual. We're still trying to figure out how to do evaluations virtually, but parents can expect IEP meetings on time, evaluations on time, referrals on time, and all the eligibility meetings. The one challenge for us is our students with really complex needs. So kids with multiple disabilities, kids with multiple services that really should be in person. So we're hopeful that OD will release some limited in-person instruction for us to be able to address some of those needs that we can't address in a comprehensive distance learning model.
Outstanding. Again, this just clearly illustrates what has been happening thus far this summer. ODE keeps releasing additional guidance. They want to get it right. We understand that, and it takes time. But Dr. Shearer is waiting for tomorrow's release to align up what our planning has been thus far to the guidance from ODE. So in closing, we believe we have a solid plan to move in and out of distance learning this year. Our plan is seamless, as it will allow us to move in and out of CDL and in-person learning, as well as give parents the ability to do that. Should they be, if we're in hybrid and a student or family, parents don't feel comfortable sending their child to the in-person instruction to the cohort that they were assigned to, they may keep them home and continue comprehensive distance learning following the bell schedule for that teacher's classroom and that school seamlessly so that they can continue to receive live instruction and asynchronous instruction. Also, our plan, we want it to be robust. Online learning is stronger and more user-friendly than ever before. And thankfully to our school board and to Superintendent Parker, we're getting the best tools that there are to support our students, teachers, and parents in this process. And then safety. Our facilities, transportation, and sanitation are designed to have safety as our first priority. So now I guess is the time for additional questions from the board. Panelists, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing at this time. But feel free, school board members, to ask me or any of our panelists any questions that you have, as well as I know we have some chat monitors that have been looking at the chat. I can't do both at the same time. So if there's some similar questions that we can address, that'd be great. Again, we don't have everything fully worked out. We're waiting for our entire staff, both classified and licensed, to come report back during pre-service so we can share our blueprint plans, all 8 sections instead of just the 3 that are before tonight, so that we can get our best thinking together. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Chair Everett.
Thank you.
I have a question. Oh, you want to go first, Mark?
No, go ahead, Kate. No.
I'm curious. I'm looking at the schedules like middle school and also high school, but what happens if a student says, well, I really don't like science and math, but I like literature, so I'm going to show up in the afternoons and not in the morning?
Karen, you want to take that?
Yeah, so I mean, attendance and monitoring attendance is key, and that's huge. And so between our licensed staff and our classified staff, if students are not showing up, then we will do family outreach. We'll be making phone calls. And if that doesn't work, we'll be doing home visits. So we will do everything we can to ensure that students are attending all of their classes, and not only attending, but actively engaged in those.
Osvaldo, you have anything to follow up?
I think that Karen took care of it. I mean, that's the reason why we have that Wednesday, right there to do a lot of that kind of work of reaching out, comparing our attendance, making sure that we know who's missing, who is showing up to some classes and not others. Yeah, but I think Karen got it.
Yeah. Oswald, while you're there, I have a question for you is,
Yeah.
so I'm looking at the cohort A and cohort B. So does that mean that there's one group of kids Monday and Tuesday and a different group of kids on Thursday and Friday?
That is correct. Let me explain that in detail. So all students are receiving the same instruction synchronously. So what that means is that at NAMS, after we did all the measurements, we could only have cohorts of about 13 students. So what that means is that while a particular teacher is teaching their lesson, 13 students will be in the classroom and the other 13 will be at home following the same lesson digitally. So those kids, in order to improve the efficiency of the sanitation techniques, we are having the same cohort attend 2 consecutive days. Then we have the Wednesday to be able to do a deep cleaning and apply the right sanitation techniques so that we can allow the second cohort to show up live on Thursday and Friday, while the first cohort who was live before goes online.
Okay.
But all kids
I
are
got it now.
receiving the same instruction daily.
So they're all receiving 4 days of instruction, but some in person, some not in person.
That is correct.
Okay,
The other flexibility is that at any given moment, a student who is attending live may decide, I'm saying a student with the consent of the parent, may decide, like, guess what? I don't think I'm safe. I'm going to stay home. Well, that student is allowed to do that and will still receive the same instruction than the student who is coming live every couple of days. So yeah, that schedule allows that flexibility.
Okay, I get it now. I was trying to figure it out. So John, what happens if the teacher is sick? The teacher's sick for whatever reason. Who's providing the instruction?
That is a great question. So I know Kevin is working on a plan with that. Kevin, do you want to take this one?
Yes, we're working on providing and getting our substitutes trained in Canvas. That's going to be critical. And so we are working on that, as well as reaching out to the ESD to confirm and see what types of trainings. The other option that we're going to be talking about later this week with our principal team is looking at other ways to possibly cover if it's just a single day with either some part-time staff or other staff that are available. So that's currently the plan right now. Certainly for long-term, we need to make sure that we get substitutes trained on the Canvas program, and we have plans to do that.
So if a teacher is sick, that they could transfer their Canvas lessons to the substitute and they could take over? Okay.
That's correct.
All right. So John, a couple questions for you, John.
Okay.
So I have heard from, and you and I have talked, that some of the teachers are really concerned because of literature, of writing their lessons, and it's easier to see what the students are doing on Google Classroom. All these new things keep coming out. I'm on the learning curve here. So, and you and I talked earlier today is, why can't we do both? Why can't we do Google Classroom and do Canvas? Because one of the concerns, well, there's several concerns, is that everybody is stressed out, parents trying to, serve their kids. There's also teachers trying to not only teach their kids, but also teach their students. The virus, who knows what kind of aid we're going to get or we're not going to get. So people are generally stressed out. They understand Google Classroom, but now they have to move to Canvas. And when you and I talked earlier today, I said, well, I'm going to just put it this way. If mama's not happy, nobody's happy at home. If mama's happy, everybody's happy. If the teacher is really happy, everybody's happy. So why can't they do both?
Yes, and that's such a great question. And we did not make this decision in isolation, nor did we make this decision lightly, because there is so much change that are impacting our students, our parents, our teachers, and our staff. So the reason why we went to Canvas is because it's a more robust, engaging, better learning tool. And I know that teachers reached out to you, as you said, we talked earlier today, and
Yeah.
I'd like, if it's all right with you, Kate, I'd like to pull in Brenda Lindsay, who has helped pilot the Canvas training. And she was instrumental in helping me make a recommendation to Dave Parker and to Cabinet for that decision. But I just want her to be able to talk about the ability for teachers to import their Google curriculum and learning activities that they might have already created, which Canvas does allow for. And then also, so this is going to be interesting because Brenda is on the cell phone right now. She can watch, but she can't talk. So Brenda, do you mind? This is called old school getting it done in digital.
Whatever works.
Absolutely. Can you hear me?
Yes, they can. They're nodding. Thank you.
Okay, great. So why Canvas? It actually came from a number of reasons. Parent surveys would be one. One thing parents ask of us is, when I was a student in high school and in the junior high and grade school, please don't make me learn 3 management systems, and please let's not have 3 ways to do this. The nice thing about Canvas is, instead of having Canvas and then having to go to Reflex and then having for effect fluency and then having to go somewhere else for something else, you can bring it all together in Canvas. So you have one learning management system. That learning management system can also take attendance. It can also do my grading. It can also host classroom discussions. It can also provide videos where I can pause the video at any time and ask questions and get feedback from my students as we're watching the video. It can also track that the students are watching the video and not just fast forwarding. The power of this program is truly awesome. However, I do understand that with that comes a big learning curve. And that's why I'm so happy that John and Dave looked at our calendar and said, we need more time. So.
Yeah, thank you. And also, can you describe, if I was an English teacher and I'm having students create an essay, you know, part of that learning process is that formative feedback that a teacher provides a student in terms of, you might want to think about this factor or this character, et cetera. How does Canvas allow that to happen?
Well, a few things. What I heard before the meeting actually started through comments, someone mentioned about Google Docs, which is a powerful tool, and it's great because it can be a live document that can be automatically edited and you can watch the student work as it's going through. But Google Docs is one of the many programs that can be embedded in Canvas. So it takes a second to upload their Google Doc and have students start working on it in Canvas. You can also give students immediate feedback right along as they're doing their work. So, and feedback back and forth between teachers and students can be in written format. It can also be in verbal format. Also, I was rather surprised that one of our, the groups that really enjoyed the idea of Canvas was some of our younger classrooms as well, with the icons and the, you know, the fact that we're not expecting a parent to recognize the reflex button, it's right there and the student can see the picture that they're looking for and go from it. So it's really a great learning management system for kindergarten all the way through college. I currently have 2 students in college and they both use Canvas.
I get that. I understand that. But my question is, you know, and John and you and I talked, and you said that ODE said they wanted each district to identify one platform. And, you know, I was looking at, you know, couldn't we do Canvas K through 6 and then 7th and 8th next year, and then, you know, at high school, the 3rd year, and anybody, all the teachers could jump in whenever, but language arts seems to be a unique experience. So, but you're saying to me, John, that ODE said you had to just, you pick one platform. You can't do 2. Is that correct?
Or a learning management system. Yes. And that was released early on in their guidance. Dave, do you want to add anything?
I think
I have one more comment.
Oh, okay.
Regarding families using Canvas. So this summer, our Tom McCall team, we took our new teachers and we went to an AVID conference virtually, and the teachers had never seen Canvas, but that was the learning platform that AVID used. So we got to be Canvas students before we ever got to be Canvas teachers. And within 3 minutes, we all understood how to work the system.
Okay. Dave, thank you, Brenda. Dave?
Yeah, I think what I would say here is that this, we need to center, we need to decide on a management system. The management system is what hosts our learning. It isn't the tools. We have lots of different tools that we'll embed in the system, and Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides, all of those still work. And so that's why I was a little confused by Lynn's comment earlier, because of Google Docs will still work just fine. They'll be able to edit and provide progress and the rest. Our issue is that we now have upwards of 180 students whose parents have talked to us about moving to a different virtual, either a virtual charter or something else. And that's because we need to provide a robust experience. Our parents and our community's experience in the spring was we need to be better than that. And yes, this is a definite challenge. We certainly hear that, but to roll back and continue to use Google Classroom right now, when we know there are better tools out here, and I just don't see that as a great possibility for us. If we roll into the spring and we're still missing 200 of our students, we're going to have a massive reduction in force going on. We've got to find a better way to provide a robust experience. And that's what we're doing with this. And yes, we know it's going to be a challenge, but we need to do this. That's kind of where we're at. Now, the other tools that teachers are using, those are still all there. Google Docs. All of our currently adopted curriculums are still the currently adopted curriculums. The only change here is this movement of where we're hosting the learning. And that's moving from Google Classroom to Canvas. So that's kind of where I'm at on that one.
Last question. Under board policy, anything that's $50,000 or over comes before the board for approval. And John, when you and I talked today, you said that it was under 50,000, around 30,000 annually, and for Canvas, correct?
Yeah, and I need to defer to Enrique. He processed the purchase order. Enrique, I'm sorry, I just can't recall the exact dollar figure.
Yeah, I'll have to pull up the exact quote, but it was under 50,000. It was around 40,000.
Yeah, I got a question from a couple people asking me why they didn't see it on the minutes in the board, and I said, well, it's probably under 50,000. So thank you very much.
Yeah, but I also want to bring up that, again, we're not actually we took already established budget money for Schoology and from some other products. And so we're not actually, this isn't an increase in cost of whatever that amount is. There's just a delta that we already had money budgeted for a separate LMS that we were using. So this isn't, the budget impact is less.
Thank you. In addition to what you said, I also believe that Canvas, especially Canvas Suite, comes with a number of features such as Screencastify, who were free in the spring, but not necessarily in the fall. And now it's part of the package. So we are actually getting more enhanced features for the same price.
Thank you.
So I've got a question for Osvaldo and for Karen, and it has to do with, you know, I'm just trying to see what a student might, what classes they might actually have for, let's say, the first 9 weeks at Neil Armstrong. I understand that they're going to have 4 academic classes. And so what, for example, Osvaldo, what would a student maybe have?
The student will have the 4 core classes: social science, math, language arts, you know, all 4 science. The only difference is that, and then an elective. The problem here, when I'm talking about electives, I'm talking about elective classes that students actually can perform in the distance learning environment. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to offer robotics or something else that they cannot really accomplish. However, some of those classes are semester long. So we need to balance. You know, in one semester, the students take PE. In the second semester, we'll take health. So that's kind of the way it goes. But the students are going to take, for sure, language arts and mathematics in both semesters. And then that's 2 of the 4 classes. Then the other 2 classes, you know, could be in one semester, science and social science, or it could be science and elective, like PE, or, you know, but that's kind of the way it's gonna go. The rest of the classes will be compiled into a 1 semester offering.
Okay, thank you.
Ours is a little bit different, and a lot of it's going to depend on grade level. Obviously, an incoming freshman, their requirements are a lot different than, say, a 12th grader, right? So our 12th grade students, if they're on track, they have English 12, government, econ, and then obviously if they're taking AP or some elective classes, then we put those in. A 9th grader, you know, and again, so 1 9-week would be a semester, but we would pair up PE and health. And then they would have their core of English, math, and science. Now, what we're really trying to do, knowing that we don't want to overload the core in, you know, a certain 9-week period. So we're just really trying to be strategic in that, but also really taking a look at like patterns in kids that are choosing classes so that we can keep our cohorts really tight. We want to minimize the number of students that are interacting with other students. And so that's our number 1 priority. So we're just looking for patterns. So English 9, conceptual physics and math, and then what's their elective? What's their common elective so we can ideally keep all kids together throughout the whole day. That's not gonna be, it's not gonna work everywhere, right? But we really want a blend of focusing on core and electives within each 9-week period.
Okay, thanks. Oh, so is it possible that let's just say a freshman, would they get a year and a half of, let's say, English in this coming school year maybe, or will they still only get a year? Do you know what I mean? 1 credit. Will they get a credit and a half? Or?
Right, well, where ODE has really told us that we need to prioritize those that are credit deficient, we would prioritize those kids that need to make up credits in doing that versus someone that wants to work ahead. We still have, we won't necessarily have the teaching staff to do that, right? Because we're having to keep our cohorts at 30 kids per teacher, 15 offsite, 15 onsite, and then they flip. So we're not going to be able to say, oh, this kid wants to work ahead necessarily. We're going to add 10 more kids to your class. So that's where it'll be a balance.
Okay, thank you.
I had a follow-up question to that. If the high school's only offering 4 classes every 9 weeks, it seems like we have a lot of elective teachers. So how are we going to be utilizing them?
The thing about some of the electives that is going to be a little bit tricky is that some of our electives have traditionally held more students than 30. And so when we have that kind of constraint, we're gonna have some kids that aren't gonna get some of those electives. So we're gonna do the best we can in getting every kid an elective that they wanted, but we're gonna have some that just might not happen, especially given distance learning. You know, how do you do a Metals 3 that is an independent project if you don't have the tools to do so, if we're all in CDL? So there's some things that we have to make some decisions on. Culinary, we have probably 500 kids sign up for culinary every year. Obviously in this scenario, we're not going to be able to put even 300 kids through that, right? So, so yeah,
I guess Karen, you're not quite getting what my question is. What are the teachers? What's the Metals teacher going to be doing? What's the Woods teacher going to be doing? And the Viking House teacher and the choir and all those teachers?
So depending on which of those. So all of them, we met with them actually just like a week and a half ago and said, okay, so CDL, what does it look like? What classes make the most sense? So they're getting prepared now. In a hybrid, we'll still be offering time in those classrooms, working with the tools. CDL, they're putting together lessons that actually support kids in learning the content that makes sense online. And then when they get to the classroom, then they'll do the hands-on component.
So if we only had 10 kids sign up for Metals 3, are we still going to offer that class?
In a hybrid situation, we would do like we do now, and we would combine it if the cohort supports that. In a distance learning, probably not.
Yeah, so are we planning? I mean, we're in a distance learning, so that's what we're going to go with, right?
Right.
Like
So
what's the number you guys are going to decide?
Well, so what we're planning on right now is being strategic and optimistic, to be honest, is that so knowing that we're in complete CDL for the first 9 weeks, what does it make sense to offer? If you're a Metals teacher, what are you going to offer? And so it's a combination of probably Metals 1 and intro classes so that kids get the content that they need, so that if we are in the next 9 weeks able to do a hybrid or in person, then they can build upon that and actually do the hands-on activities. They were last spring very creative and very good about creating some great videos that gave kids that perspective of how to build things, even though they weren't necessarily in the lab themselves. So
yeah, I think some teachers did really good at that, but then I heard that there were other classes that were offered, other electives where they're like, oh, I can't do this online. So if they couldn't do those classes online in the spring, I don't think it makes sense for us to offer it now.
Our tools, I mean, I'm yes, in some cases, you're absolutely right. In some cases, we're not going to be able to offer some of those classes. But our tech tools that we have invested in as a district, I'm very optimistic. I'm really excited at what all of our teachers are going to be able to do with kids in front of them. Obviously, it's going to look totally different. Absolutely, especially for our hands-on classes. But they're also very creative and they're getting used to thinking outside the box, even though we've been in the situation for only 5 months.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Karen, I got a question.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Brent.
I guess for me, if I'm looking at staff and I'm looking at instructional staff, do you have a plan for how are you going to use instructional staff? Just knowing the numbers that are in not only at the high school, but throughout the district. At some level, just knowing what we did during the spring, I think that we should have some idea how we're going to use their time during that time. So I guess that's the question.
Absolutely. Like Kim said earlier, we're waiting on tomorrow's guidance because that's going to focus a lot around special ed as well as another component. And I believe it has to do with hybrid and cohorts. But yeah, the instructional staff and how we can best utilize them to support kids in the classroom is going to be key. And so we are very aware that in the springs, you know, we didn't know what we didn't know, right? So we learned a lot from spring. And so Kim and I and we'll work together to make sure that staff are where they need to be to support kids, right, Kim?
Yeah, so I think one of the differences this fall will be that our instructional assistants will be trained to use Canvas. So our challenge last year was that they just they weren't used to technology like teachers may have been. Even our teachers struggled. And so we're intentionally planning for them to be a part of the Canvas training. In the special ed teachers are going to be assigning students to special education instructional assistants. So they'll be doing live check-ins. Many of the instructional assistants will be assigned to classrooms. So at K4, many of them will be a part of a classroom and they'll be supporting students within that. And the great thing about Zoom is that you can do breakout rooms. So you have that confidentiality piece. And then I know at the high school, we haven't finalized plans. We've talked a lot about having them do separate study periods to be able to support them like they did in tutorials, but it will be a virtual tutorial. So we plan on having clear expectations for instructional assistants, and many of them are really asking for that because they really felt like they wanted to be doing more. So I think we have more in place now.
Okay, just a follow-up question in terms of attendance. How are we gonna, I mean, are we tracking attendance, and how are we gonna follow through with the students who choose not to participate?
So I'll take that one. Yes, in the OD guidance, there's pretty specific information about attendance. What counts as actual attendance, how often you need to have contact with a student. So that's important. What's interesting is, again, in our schools, we have positions that are student managers. We're going to need those people. And while they may not be walking the halls right now, they're going to be the folks that we need to rely on to start reaching out. Not only our teachers, but also our assistant principals, our deans, our at the high school level, our grad coaches. As kids disengage, we need to get a hold of the family. We got to get a hold of the kids, and we've got to re-engage them. So the attendance is much more stringent this time around as far as what counts as a day, you know, in session.
And I'm going to say that that's one thing that in the spring we learned a lot from, and we utilized a lot of our classified staff, our dean, and family outreach. And when kids didn't show up, we had a huge spreadsheet, and we would start making phone calls, and then we would do home visits, and we would record those in-person conversations. Did the student show up? Nope. Okay, let's go to the home again. So it's a lot of detail accounting work. But again, we learned a lot last spring. And I think the people that we had doing that work made a huge difference in just visiting the families and communicating. Here's your hotspot. Here's your Chromebook. You know, how can we help you? How can we support you to get involved in your classes and do better, you know, in this environment? So yeah, we'll do better.
Karen, do we actually have numbers? Have we quantified that?
As far as like who was missing in the spring?
Yeah, what the attendance was. What was the baseline attendance when we left? And where were we in the spring? And then what are our expectations for now, moving into the next school year?
Yes, we have a spreadsheet that details all that. I couldn't give you the numbers off the top of my head, but yeah, we can get that. Absolutely. Okay. Yeah.
Karen, I have a question. This is Narsim.
Yeah.
Actually for, you know, anybody. So, you know, in the past, as a parent, you know, we would call the main office to say my child will be absent. Is that system still in place for families to call in?
Yes.
You know, if they have to take their child to a doctor or so forth and so on. So that continues to be in place.
Absolutely. Yep.
And what about for after school activities? You know, will those continue to happen, especially tutoring or any other thing that the student might want to engage with for, you know, student building, community building?
So ODE is very, they're adamant that yes, we continue those activities, that we continue clubs, we continue extracurricular activities in a, what we're waiting for a little bit right now is just what does that look like if you're in a comprehensive distance learning model, hybrid model. Absolutely. We were trying to fit it within our cohorts and figure out, okay, so if kids are going to be after school, then how do they fit within this cohort? But yes, to provide all of those supports and resources and enrichment for kids is still a top priority.
We were at NAMS, we also, followed that closely since the summer. And our CLC program will continue to function. Obviously, there are a few clubs that in the distance learning model, they're not gonna be able to implement their programming, but the great majority will still be in session. I mean, I also know that at Tom McCall, I mean, they still kept, even during distance learning, they kept a very strong program at Tom McCall Elementary. So I know it can be done.
Yes, and we're looking at that, Narce, for our Juntos program. You know, just how do we adapt and continue to meet the needs?
And just one more question about data gathering. It appears that this Canvas software will be able to capture some data. Will Canvas be able to capture some data also on how the students may be receiving this, distance learning that they are, where they be surveys to see if our marginalized students and families it's hard. I mean, we already know it's harder on them, but is there any particular benchmarks for data gathering to assure that we are paying attention, once a month or every 6 weeks to see what are some of the red flags that we might have to be able to put in interventions?
Right. So the most immediate aspect is the grades and the immediate access to student progress. And before it becomes a grade, informing parents how their student is progressing is key. But yes, we can also pull off some data. And from what I understand, it does work. Let me correct, Brenda, correct me if I'm wrong, but it works, or Enrique, it works closely with Synergy as well.
Well, I'm going to let Enrique take the Synergy piece, but I'm currently a teacher of a course that is adult learning, and I can see how many times a fellow teacher has viewed each lesson. I can see which lessons they viewed. I can see how long they were on each lesson. And it gives you that data in an easy to read format where you can see who's going through the lessons, and I can see who's just started today.
So it generates those kind of reports.
It does.
Yeah, and just as Brenda mentioned, yeah, there are activity reports that teachers can run to show student engagement within the Canvas courses and activities. With respect to direct attendance, my understanding is that right now the attendance will still be entered into Synergy.
Thank you.
I have another question. What about Measure 98 money? If we cannot provide the electives at the high school in the fall, will we lose money, and will we have to lay off teachers?
No, I mean, the special session has started today, I believe, and so we're waiting to get information about whether or not, what exactly that financial package that's going to come through. Currently, our understanding is they're fully funding Measure 98. Part of what Karen was trying to explain is that in holding the cohorts at 30, 15 in each, they're actually going to have more section. I mean, there's some of those electives would choir, and some of those would have much larger class sizes. So they're going to have more sections somewhere. And so again, there's some movement as they build this master schedule. There's going to be some movement of folks. And so we're going to need all the people that we have there. I don't see this as a way for us to have fewer people because they aren't teaching this, I think it's just going to be moved around quite a bit more. Karen, I don't know if you have a different opinion of that, but
I do know that our doorbell rang and she answered it. She's down there. So terrible timing. Sorry. I can call her in just a second. I'll go do that.
So I just have just maybe one comment. I do get worried about the courses where we would typically call them hands-on courses, elective courses, and the longer we're in a CDL mode, the more challenging it is for those teachers to create curriculum that's going to be delivered in a CDL mode. And so I do get worried about that the longer we're in the CDL mode for those courses.
I get you.
It's challenging, and that's all.
I have a comment. I'm just wondering about, Dave, this is probably for you and John, but at some level, how do we hold people accountable? I know, Dave, you and I had talked about this before with Mark, but at what level do we hold people accountable for making sure that we're doing what we need to be doing when we're on a kind of that CDL model?
Yeah, so I think what we saw in the spring was we saw buildings that made use of all of their people and kind of had conversations and began to make sure that we were doing the outreach that needed, had probably some better experiences. And so again, as we begin to meet with our administration, that'll be part of our expectations is as we start to work with folks, we've got to make sure that we're utilizing all the folks in our organization. And some of our folks that might not have, because of their job, I mean, I'm thinking about student supervisors as an example. You know, they're not in the hallway right now. So we've got to change their job. We've got to give them some new, here's what we want you working on, tracking down the attendance, running the visits. But part of that has to do with us, and that's a leadership problem. That's us as our district administration beginning to think about how are we making use of all of our folks. And that's, I mean, we had this conversation, so I know that's exactly one of the things we're going to be talking about when we have all our principals in on Thursday is, again, we've got to make sure that we're connecting with families. And that families who are disengaging because it's hard, because of there's problems, we've got to get people out to them to bring them back to re-engage. But you bring up a good point. It's something that we as leaders are going to have to take on.
And also just, you know, part of this blueprint process, we shared 1 through 3, but that 4 through 8 really needs to be flushed out as well. And that means we're doing things in different ways. And like Dave was saying, and part of that process is walking through what does that average day look like? What does that look like when students arrive at the building and transition to their classroom? What does that look like, you know, at the various levels in terms of where kids eat lunch, that sort of thing, and who's supervising. But the added challenge is cohort exposure, minimizing the exposure that a given staff has to multiple cohorts. We've got to minimize that and eliminate that, particularly when we're in hybrid, which means you just can't have your hall duty people out supervising the entire high school during lunch. It doesn't work like that. In fact, you can't have the whole high school out there during lunch. So where are they? And how does the teacher get lunch? Those are the types of logistics that we've identified on paper. It looks good, you know, in terms of our blueprint reopening team, but when you get to the implementation, there's always unintended consequences or unforeseen circumstances that we need to address. So it's not only the comprehensive distance learning, but Brad, you're absolutely right in terms of, you know, I point towards the high school dean and it comes to mind for me, the dean of students and Francis, the parking lot monitor, who transitioned to outreach to the students that they were not connecting with, getting out there and knocking on doors, meeting parents, meeting the students, having those conversations. And that was done, out of necessity on the fly. The good thing is we have more time to include more staff in our planning during pre-service to make sure what we have written on paper is realistic. And once we implement it, is it being successful?
Okay. Well, let's see, from the board, are there any other questions? I think we're about ready to, okay.
Let me
Go ahead,
just,
Dave. Sorry.
we still have a couple of questions that we
Okay.
haven't really got answers for yet. I'll get those. We'll put those with the other ones from the last time around. Those are still, we're still prepping that to go out. And again, I just want to, the only thing that has been consistent since March 12th is that things change. A week and a half ago, we were planning on the hybrid, and now we're in the CDL. So I know there's lots of things still for us to figure out. And as we bring our staff back, I'm sure they're going to have lots of ideas about how we can do this better. So I just want to assure everybody, we put out our best guess tonight, but I'm positive that there's still going to be lots of changes and evolutions here as we get into the fall. And that's what I wanted to end with.
Okay, thank you, Dave. And thank you, everybody that was present this evening presenting. It is, it's just daunting. I don't know any other way to say it. I mean, it's just doing school and changing so dramatically from March to the end of August or first part of September when staff are, on summer break. I mean, it's just daunting. So thanks for your efforts. And, I commend everybody for all the thought that's going into it. And like Dave said, when you have more staff back, there'll be more people contributing. So just appreciate your efforts. So thank you.
Thank you.
So with that, yeah. So we'll move on to, we have 2 action items this evening. And the first one is an item for regarding surplus equipment in the technology area. And I believe that Enrique is presenting this to the board this evening.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, the action item that is before you today is FGSD has broken and obsolete technology hardware that cannot be repaired, is no longer supported by the vendor manufacturer, or is incompatible with existing software and systems. This hardware has no significant resale value and cannot be repurposed, or in most cases, any parts to repair them just aren't available anymore. So it has been determined to be surplus. Currently, all the surplus equipment is at the Taylor Way warehouse. Our recommendation to the board is we ask to approve approve declaring the list of broken and obsolete technology as hardware. And I believe the list was provided as part of the board packet.
Okay, thank you, Enrique. Does the board have any questions for Enrique?
Hey, Enrique, when this is surplus, where does this go?
Generally,
I was going to ask that.
Yeah, generally we have an electronics recycler that is used, and they recycle all the electronic equipment. That's usually handled by the facilities department. They have recyclers that they work with. In some cases, with certain vendors, if we're purchasing hardware, a lot of times if it's their hardware, like Dell, sometimes they'll take it back themselves for recycling. So sometimes we'll work with them if we're doing a purchase, or in some cases, they may offer us like a credit if they see anything that might be applied to a purchase. But in most cases, it's so old and obsolete, they just take it back to do the recycling for us.
Thanks. You want a motion?
Okay.
Mark?
Yeah.
I move that we okay this for surplus and move on.
Second.
I second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded, so we'll do a roll call vote. I'll start with Narce.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Kate,
Yes.
Brad,
Yes, Mark.
Val,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. So that motion passes. Thank you, Enrique.
Yeah, thank you.
And the next action item is a calendar item, and I believe Kevin Noreen's presenting the calendar item this evening. So Kevin.
Yes, good evening, Chair Everett, members of the board. As we've been talking about with the Canvas and the comprehensive distance learning model, we have identified that we do need additional days to provide professional development for our staff in regards to learning more and getting trained up on the Canvas learning distance model. So with that, you have before you a proposal to convert the original first 4 days of the school year, September 8th through September 11th, to professional development days. And that would then make the first actual day of school for all students be that Monday, September 14th. Currently in our pre-service week, we only have 2 days of professional development, so we feel that additional 4 days will be very well needed and very well used for our staff to provide this additional training, specifically around Canvas. Additionally, we're also trying to prepare for when and if we go into the hybrid model. And so the other proposed change in the calendar is to move all professional development or grading days, which are non-student contact days, from Fridays to Wednesdays. There are just 5 of those days in the calendar. And with that, if and when we move to a hybrid model, then we would not have an imbalance in days in person for a cohort, such as cohort A and cohort B. If all of those professional grading days and professional development days are on Fridays, that could impact the cohort B by having less days of in-person class instruction. So that's the reason for those 2 changes, and be happy to take any questions.
So Kevin, does this change in the schedule? I mean, just to be clear, it seems like it's decreasing instructional days. I mean, right, because you're taking 2, maybe, I mean, I know the first couple of days are maybe only 9th graders or maybe only 7th graders, or
right.
But there's a couple of full school instructional days probably there. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct.
Kevin, this is Narce. The professional development, is that mainly for technology and Canvas and all that, or does it involve other professional training?
Yeah, right now, and John, you can chime in if I miss this, but it's primarily focused around the Canvas training for staff.
Absolutely.
Also,
Canvas and Zoom are the priorities. I'm sorry,
Thank
Dave,
you.
I stepped on you.
Yeah, I was going to say there's, we know that there's going to be, teachers are going to need to reach out to families and create relationships. So this 4 days would be PD, it'll be extra prep. We want them to get planned ahead. It would be an opportunity to reach out to families and create that first connection. So it's, we have a there's a lot of different things that will happen with these 4 days.
As well as even if we're in CDL, principals need time with their staff to articulate building access, maintaining social distance, maintaining safety and well-being, visitors to the school. I mean, the list just goes on and on, but that will be a component as well.
And just a follow-up question to my earlier one. So in terms, there was always the hour issue, John, and maybe you know this. So this doesn't impact any of that by, right? I mean, I don't even know how they measure it anymore.
I know.
Right?
Yeah. So the answer is yes, we meet the hour requirement. And I saw Val's question earlier in terms of, we're above, the synchronous learning requirement from ODE, which we've prioritized. And but the new guidance has allowed, I believe it's doubled the time allowable for PD from 30 hours to 60. And then also parent outreach time, I believe, has doubled 30 to 60. Now, there's a new advisory coming out, tomorrow, and it's a moving target. But we're definitely going to be able to count instructionally, those essential activities, and ODE heard that statewide from multiple districts. Hey, for us to make this happen, we've got to have time with our teachers and classified staff up front, and then also time for parent outreach and training the parents up. That's the other big thing, in terms of Canvas. How are we doing that? Who's doing it? That sort of thing. And I do just want to say to the board, we do have a train the trainer model. We've looked at the possibility of going outside for vendors to help provide this professional development, and our principals were unanimous to a person, and so was our FGA. The most valuable member is teachers that know our schools, getting trained and provide that just-in-time support, in addition to our TOSAs, in terms of ongoing professional development. But again, we're going to monitor the needs, and we will commit Wednesday PD time so that our teachers are set up for success.
I have a question. This is Valerie. Are the grading days going to be after the 9-week periods?
I'm going to see if Karen or Oz have got that, because I don't. I'm trying to look and see where the end of the quarter is at.
Yeah, since the 9 weeks are different, I wasn't really sure how it lines up, if the grading days are going to be after the 9 weeks are done, and also how it lines up with the high school calendar and our conferences and all that stuff.
Yeah, Brian Burke was in our planning meeting, and he was looking at that. And we were talking about conferences as well, particularly the fall conferences. Historically, we've hosted the OSAA, I think, Mark, was it
the 4A?
The 2A or 3A competition. OSAA is going to make some revisions and some formal announcements here in the near future. But we just decided, you know what, again, this is a perfect example. There's so much change coming to our parents and our students if we can keep it consistent. So we decided, regardless of what they announce, let's keep it the same, and that will support those valuable conversations before the grade books get too far along, for those conversations with individual parents to occur.
So it sounds like we're not real sure. So maybe somebody can get back to us on that.
Yeah, I would just hate to approve a calendar and then we're going to be coming back at the next meeting, because it doesn't, I don't see how it's lining up at all when I'm looking at this calendar.
So there's a couple of questions in the Q&A about this too. So maybe the thing we need immediately is the 4 days part of this. So maybe we go back, we'll do a little more work on the rest of this. But if we can get the 4 days approved, because I've got to communicate this, and we've kind of already done some communication, but we can bring back that other part of it, because I know I'm seeing some questions and I don't have a ready answer right now. Team, how does that sound?
So we're okay in the 4-day in service and then coming back with the remainder of the schedule.
Correct. We've got to deal with, when we do get into hybrid, we need the A's and B's to have the same number of in-person. But I see some of the questions about, is the grading day now in front of the end of the quarter? And so we'll come back to you with a more certain plan on that part of it.
Because
So yeah,
on this
go
calendar,
ahead.
is the grading day any of the gray ones that say P?
Yeah.
Yeah, those are those days. So they're just shifting in that week. So you're correct, like on the January date, that we shifted it from that Friday, which would have been the end of the semester on January 29th, to the Wednesday. And I know that we
So
had
but
some,
now with pushing up the days, like starting school on the 14th, the first grading day thing for the teachers to do grades would be on week 5. The Wednesday of week 5.
right. And I'm trying to remember if we had that conversation about changing those 4 days when we had that committee get together. So we can certainly circle back, because we made sure that we had representatives from all the levels. And so we can circle back with those representatives and again, double check on that to see, do we need to adjust those? That's the one part of it, as John stated, that we didn't want to, we were trying to minimize the number of changes that we had to make in this calendar, certainly keeping the conferences set to where they were. We had lots of discussion around that. And we did have conversation again about the moving in terms of hybrid, trying to keep the cohorts as equal as possible. But we can certainly circle back and get back to you on the movement of those days from end of the week to the midweek, and to see if by starting school 1 week later, what that's going to do to the remainder of the schedule.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because I wasn't really sure. Can you still hear me? My AirPods might have just died.
Oh, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay. They're like dinging in my ear. I wasn't sure if maybe some of those days were just going to be staff development. Like maybe that one in October on the 14th could have been staff development, and then the first grading thing was December 2nd. So I guess I just wasn't sure about that either.
They're a mixture, definitely. Yes.
Okay, so there might be.
At the
both.
secondary level, those are usually half grading and half professional development, with the exception of the end of the semester. For elementary, as John said, they're usually the opposite, that elementary many of the times are either full grading or full professional development.
Okay, I think at some level, probably go back and figure out, update the calendar, so we know what that looks like in the future. And then, Dave, do you want us to a motion for the 4 days?
Yeah, that's what I need tonight.
Yeah.
We need to make a decision on that part, and then we can bring back a better explanation of the, we'll go through and check on some of the things that people have, that they're worried about.
Okay.
So, Mark, you want a motion?
Yeah, let's do that.
So I'll move that we adopt those 4 days as in-service days, as expressed by Kevin Noreen.
A second.
Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. So Kate,
Yes.
Val,
Yes.
Narce,
Yes.
Brad,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. So that motion passes. So we'll have those days changed, and I can come back with another look at the calendar for our next meeting.
And I think it behooves us to move on this pretty quick. Like, we'll try and bring it back for the August 24th, just because we want to get a clean calendar out to people. So we'll work on that.
Okay. All right. Good. Thank you. All right. Let's see. We are, I think we're, gotta get my page up here. Okay. Future board, future action and discussion items. So On this one, this evening, we will add the superintendent goals, board goals, and board and superintendent operating agreements to the September 28, 2020 work session. The 2019-2020 documents will be sent out to each of us this week to review, and it'll give us some time to think about what we might like to do for the 2020-2021 school year. So, that's something that we, in the past, we've done earlier, and just with all the changes this year, this is going to be moved to towards the end of September. So, and then the last is, I think, an information item. The Oregon English Language Learner Report is in the board packet. And are there any other comments from board members or any other suggestions for future board items before we adjourn?
Mark?
Yes.
I would just like to say thank you to all of the Forest Grove principals and administration for working really hard on the plans with all this COVID related. So thank you. I know it's a lot of work, so I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I echo that. And I think with that, I'll adjourn the meeting, and the meeting is adjourned at 8 p.m. So thank you, everybody, and have a good rest of the week.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, everyone.
Yep. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.